this is Holly from Holly's Bakery. Today I'm going to show you how to put a coupler in a bag. I'm going to show you how to tort a cake. Well, actually not tort it, but level it and fill it. And I'm going to show you how to crumb coat it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with, this is a pastry bag and they sell them in assorted sizes, but this is the basic size. I think it's a 12-inch. And this is a coupler. I always use a coupler. They come, I don't always use them, but a lot of times, they come attached like this. You need to take off the top ring, drop it down into the bag, pointy side down, push down on it a little bit, take your scissors and score it just under the threads. Then you're going to take a tip, any size tip that you decide that you want to use, you'll put it on and then you will screw the little ring over the threads. And there you have a bag that is coupled. I will show you how to fill the bag. So you want to wrap the bag around your hand, make a nice opening. They also sell a cup that, or you can use a skinny cup that you can do that with. And then I want to take some of my frosting and I want to just fill my bag. And you want to try not to get huge pockets of air in there because that will affect your decorating if you're going to decorate with it. And for most decorating, you would want the bag only half full at most. I'm going to fill this up more because I'm actually going to use this to go around the base of my cake. So I want to fill it up a little bit more. And I'm actually not going to use the tip right now. So I'm going to take off the ring and the tip, and I'll save them for later when I need them for my border. So now I have a bag of icing. It's ready to go here. I would not decorate with this because this is too full and it's like having a pen that's out of control in your hand. Some people can do it. I can't. I need less frosting in mine. So what I have here is I have a 12-inch cardboard round, and I hope you can see this. I have a 12-inch cardboard round and I have a 12-inch cake. So on these cakes I baked last night and I froze them. And I usually don't freeze them in the pan, but because I just did last night. So, but if you do want to freeze them in the pan, that's fine. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to flip that cake out because it's frozen. It's easier to work with. I find it much easier to work with. So I'm going to take my pan and put it over here so it can be washed. And then I'm going to flip it back over. I have a piece of parchment paper. I actually lined my pan before I baked it with parchment paper. And I buy the parchment rounds. They're already pre-cut. And I line them with those. Sometimes I will cut the parchment if I am out of those. You can cut them into circles. Just trace it in the pan and cut it. So, I'm going to level my cake. I have a serrated knife. And I want to take, and I know this cake is going to be really moist because, look at that. I don't know if you can see that, but it's going to be a very moist cake. They will be very happy. After you freeze them, they become even more moist. I'm going to throw those scraps away. A lot of people make cake balls out of them, cake pops, whatever. I'm not going to do that. Not today, anyway. So what I want to do is I just want to go around and I want to get this as level as possible. I'm eyeballing it right now. Okay, you know where my level is? I washed it.
Right here. Yeah. Sort of to the center.
So I have a little level. And what I'm going to do is I'm checking to make sure that my cake is level. And you don't have to use a level, but I prefer to at least make sure I'm pretty close, because sometimes your eyeballs get tired and you think you were, and then you stacked it and then you have a crooked cake, and that sucks. So ta-da, it's not right on the money, and I go around and I make sure that all sides are level. So that side's a little high. And I'm going to have to say that's pretty close to as level as I'm going to get. And a lot of times I will pat, I like to pat my crumbs down. Don't ask me why, but I just get a little nutty about that. Then I'm going to take and I'm going to put some icing down on the bottom of this. Flip my cake over. Ta-da! Put it on the turntable. Get rid of these crumbs into the garbage. Push it down. Make sure it's stuck on there pretty good. That's even. So that when I put my frosting on, I don't have one big giant fat side of frosting and one skinny side. So that looks pretty good. Then I'm going to take off my parchment, throw that in the garbage. I have a pretty nice looking level cake there. Actually, one side looks a little higher when I stand back, so I'm going to press it down. Make sure your hands are clean. Okay. Now, so for this, what I do, this is going to have Bavarian cream in it, but since I don't like everything to soak up into the cake, I will usually apply a thin layer of icing. Just kind of as a little bit of a base. And then you never want to leave those crumbs on your spatula. I'm going to build a little dam, and I'm just going to use a coupler edge, and there's a little side on that coupler edge that has a little groove on it. And I'm going to come around and I'm going to make a dam. And that's going to help hold in my filling so that it doesn't bulge out the sides. And also gives me it's like a barrier wall for the Bavarian cream that I'm going to use. Now, a lot of times I make my Bavarian cream, but I also found a really good product that is terrific and everybody loves it. So I am going to fill this with Bavarian cream. And the thing about filling a wedding cake versus a birthday cake is it's tricky, because if you put too much filling inside, what happens is when you stack that second layer on there, a lot of times you'll have the bulge from the filling coming out the sides. So it's a fine line between too much filling and not enough. And I like to fill mine more. And since this cake is going to have rough icing on it, they don't want it iced smooth, I'm going to go ahead and give it a nice thick coating of Bavarian cream filling, because the cakes are thick, and I really think that you need a nice thick layer of the Bavarian cream in there. In this cake, they wanted chocolate cake with Bavarian cream for the first layer. And then their second layer will be white cake with a raspberry filling. And then their top tier is going to be the same thing, the chocolate cake with the Bavarian cream. So I'm going to push that off to the side. I want to get these crumbs out of my way. And it doesn't matter if you go all the way to the edge with the filling, because by the time you put the cake on top, what's going to happen is it's going to push that filling out a little bit anyway. So you don't really want to go all the way to the edge with it unless you're doing a thin filling. But if you're doing it fatter like I just did, and I didn't even do it as fat as I sometimes do it, I just don't want this to bulge out. Depends on my client, how particular they are. If I know that they're more into the taste factor than the look factor, then I really don't care if it bulges, they want the filling, then I will do that. So I lined this one, but the liner stuck in the pan. That's okay though, because my cake didn't stick to the bottom of the pan. And it looks beautiful. I'm actually gonna set it on the liner here. And I see that one side of my cake is kind of high. And if you don't level your cakes, what happens is the cake will crack because you have it unbalanced. Or if you have a mound in the middle, if you don't cut that mound off, what happens is all the weight falls to the sides when you flip it over. And since the cake is frozen, so I either freeze it or get it really cold to work with it, because I don't like working with the fresh cake unless it's like German chocolate or a small layer cake. They tend to crack on you if they're nice and moist. And this is safer. It's a safer bet to work with the frozen cake. Because at the last minute, the last thing you want to be doing is baking another cake like in a major hurry. Oh my god, the wedding is in 2 hours and I broke the cake in half. And now I have to bake a whole cake and cool it and frost it and stack it. That's when you start to freak. And it's happened to me, so tried and true. And I keep doing this, and I know this takes time, but it's what you have to do if you want to get the, uh-oh. If you cut it a little bit too much off, don't worry, because you can fix it with a little bit of frosting. And this is just my way. There are many, many, many ways to make a cake, and a lot of people will tell you, I do mine different. And that's cool, but this is how I do mine. My little level, pretty much on the money, way off. And you want to make sure it's level all the way to the edge too, because if you, and hold the edges when you cut them, because sometimes they fall off when you're cutting and that really bites. So the most important thing though is that you do not have the bulge in the middle, the round part. And if you use bake even strips, sometimes you don't have to level the cake at all. The cake will bake perfectly even. And you have to do very little leveling. These baked not too bad, but they were still high on one side. Another reason I push on the cake, keeps it together better too. And still a little bit high. Just a little. I know just a little doesn't seem like a lot, but when you stack this sucker and it looks all crooked and you have to take it apart and figure it out, it's not fun. I also pat it down because then the crumbs doesn't make my level off balance. So and I have to say that looks pretty good. So take out the parchment, wipe away any excess crumbs, big excess crumbs if you can. And put that cake on there. I do not know if you saw that. It's on. And then I give it a push down for good measure and get some of that air out of the middle because you don't want the air pocket to start bubbling out of your frosting later. So now I've got a beautiful level cake that anyone would like. And if you'll notice, that is a lot of cake. The tiers on that cake are much thicker than a normal cake. So this cake is quite tall. I don't have a ruler on here, but it's probably about 5 inches tall right now, 5.5. After I get frosting on it, it will probably be close to 6. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I don't know where my ruler is at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crumb coat this cake. And I want to throw away this, move this out of the way, clean up my crumbs, because when you're frosting your cake, the less crumbs around your cake, the less crumbs will be in the frosting. Okay, so I have my cake here, and I'm going to give it a crumb cake. You can use an offset spatula like this. You can use a straight spatula like this. On large cakes, I like the offset spatula because then I can go around the top without hitting my knuckles into the top. But for putting the icing on, it doesn't matter. The thing with putting on the icing is, in the beginning, the more the merrier. If you don't put a lot of icing on, that's where all your trouble starts. So you want to get a lot of icing on there so your spatula never touches that cake. If your spatula touches the cake, then what happens is crumbs lift up, and then you have crumbs all in your frosting, which is okay, but not for a wedding cake typically, unless they want it to look like cookies and cream. And then you can do it. So see, I want that frosting to overhang my edge there. You see that edge on there? I want it to overhang on there. But I want to go around, and I want to wipe away any of these mangy little crumbs at the bottom. And hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. But I'm going to go around and I'm going to put on a pretty heavy layer. of icing all the way down to the board. Because you don't want to see that board. You want that board to be covered with icing. And I hope you can see from that angle, but if you can't, what I'm doing is I'm just putting on a lot of icing going around. And there will be some crumbs in your crumb coat, as you can see. And that's why we call it a crumb coat, because what it's doing is it's going to seal up the cake so that when you apply the second layer of icing, you've got a nice coating on there that you won't be touching your spatula to the actual cake when you put the second layer on. And then you won't have any difficulties. And I like to move my spatula back and forth in a motion. You never want to just pick straight up off the cake. You always want to slide it. I'm going to go back in and fill in where I didn't get. And this time I'm using a really creamy icing. And the reason for that is because they want this cake to be a, they actually want it to look like this. So I'm just showing you, I don't even really need to crumb coat it except for the fact that I want to show you how to crumb coat a cake. So I've got a lot of my coating on there. I mean a lot of icing. I'm going to take off a lot of this icing now. So I'm going to get my big offset spatula, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to smooth out my top, and every time I take a big swipe of icing and put it back into the bowl. And I always want to come from the outside corner to the inside of the cake. Outside corner to the inside of the cake. And then on the outside, I want to hold my spatula at an angle, 45-degree angle, and I want to go around my cake like so. And now normally, if I were going to ice this smooth, all these little holes, you have to go back in and spackle them in, even for the crumb coat. Because when you go and put your second layer on, then you'll have problems because your icing is going to divot into there again, and you'll see you'll have air pockets, and it won't be pretty. And if you want a really smooth cake, you'll take my advice on that and spackle back in where you see like this here, this big air pocket or big pocket of no frosting. It will turn into an air pocket later if you don't get that filled in right away with icing. And you'll see them up here. So you want it to go look for any bald spots. Then there are a couple of tools that I like to use. This is just a scraper. It's like what you would scrape your table with, chop, mince onions, whatever. And this is a bowl scraper. And this you basically use like this to scrape the remainder of your icing or whatever out of the bowl. I will use the plastic one sometimes, usually when I'm crumb coating, and then I will come back and hit it with that the metal one to get a perfect coat. But if you see how much better of a job that does than the actual spatula, and if you have carpal tunnel syndrome or your hand hurts, this is a way better road to go. Spatula will cause you a misery in a minute. Some people prefer to use a spatula because that's what they're used to, but I'm used to this. So I almost can't even go back to the spatula route. I got spoiled on this way. And then, you see it's getting there. You're gonna come across on that ledge, pull in, come across on that ledge, pull in, come across on that ledge, pull in. You gotta keep scraping off your scraper though, every time. Otherwise you'll just put more drag on the frosting and you will not have a pretty nice crisp edge. And you're gonna keep going around your cake until you get that lip off there. And that's what that excess frosting, I don't know if you can see that, but do you see how I have a lip over here on top of that cake? There's an edge of icing that comes up above. That's what I want. I want to have that edge of icing that comes above. That's the reason for having excess icing on there. And if I don't have that edge, I'm not going to get this beautiful edge that I will finally obtain after working on this for a little while. And pull it. So that's that's a crumb coat, which is, this is plenty good to throw it now back or let it sit and then come back and hit it with another coating after it crusts. But if I wanted to get this cake really, really smooth, I would hit it with this metal one. And again, do not forget that you have to scrape. The metal one's actually taller too, so the other one's not quite as tall to get to the top of the cake. And see, my buttercream is already drying, so working fast is kind of essential. Because once you get it drying, and a lot of people come and they hit it with a spray bottle of water. I don't like to do that unless I absolutely have to. And see, it's a crumb coat, so, but I will take that big crumb out because you will see that through the next layer of icing. And I want to fill that in. And it's okay if you see through right now because this is the first coat. The second coat's going to cover all that up. But right now, all I really wanted to do was get a pretty decent, smooth base coat going on there. Like a primer. And then I'm gonna, I don't like this one for the top though. I do like the plastic for the top because it has an easier touch. And see, I just dug down with the metal one. But the plastic one is easier to drag along the top. And get that smooth look on the top. See the crumbs? Crumb coat. Although a lot of times I can do a cake without even crumb coating it if I put a lot of frosting on. But I really prefer the crumb coat method. When I taught classes, I taught not to crumb coat. So, but after working in a few bakeries, most of them do a crumb coat. And it gives it a much more professional, smooth look, in my opinion. Okay, so what I have here is I have a crumb coated cake. It's not spectacular, but it's not bad by any means for crumb coat. Crumbs coat, see? Now what you're going to do is Sorry, I keep walking away, but what you're gonna do does not make such a mess, but just gonna come around. And you're going to set this on a bigger base than what you want it to be. Right here I have a base that I'm going to use to put my wedding cake on. It's 2 inches bigger than the wedding cake itself. So if this is a 14, I could use a 16 if I want, but I have decided on the 14. I'm going to take some double-sided double stick tape. I want to stick them all over, everywhere but the outer edge. Uh-oh. And this takes, I usually buy the longer pieces and I don't have to worry about these mini ones, but this is what they had when I went to the store. And I try to evenly distribute them because they do have some height to them. So if I have like a big hole over here, my cake might look crooked when I set it down. So I want them to come out to the edge as far as I think I can get away with. Don't go too far because then you'll have tape sticking out from the edge of your cake. And then I'm going to go peel off all the little backings. These are like picture mounting tapes or something, but they're very sticky. So I like them because they hold my cake down while I'm driving with it. And my cake doesn't slide off this base. Because when I was a newbie, I used to stick frosting on there to hold it. And one time I went around the corner, thank God the cake was fondant, but the whole cake slid off of this base because you have a cardboard under here. And I freaked out. The whole cake slid off. I had a big hole in the cake. I had to hurry back, repair the hole. The cake slid right off the base. It was in a cardboard box, thanks God, but the side of the cardboard box poked into the cake. It broke my bows off the cake. It was really my only real cake disaster so far, knock on fiberboard. And it wasn't funny because if it had fallen off and gotten ruined, somebody's wedding would have been ruined, so I always take the extra measure to put all these little tapes on, or pieces of tape, or if I don't have this, I use duct tape and I roll it over just like you did when you were a kid and you had to glue something down on a project board. That's what I do. And they're very sticky. Then I'm going to get my cake, I'm going to pick it up. No more frosting glue for this kid, for in between 2 points that are on cardboard to surface. The cake will adhere to the cardboard because the moisture in the cake, but the cardboard will not adhere to this base, no matter how much frosting you stick down. So I don't go by that rule anymore. And I'm going to wash off my turntable. I don't want to get my base all ugly. And I want to get all these cake crumbs from the table again. So sorry this video is so long, but this is a time-consuming process and usually takes longer. This cake's going to be a bit of a breeze because they don't want it perfectly iced. They specifically told me that they want it to look rough. So I'm going to go with that, and I'm happy about it actually. And the reason why I use this junky little turntable is I have a professional turntable, but it wobbles. And then I can't tell if I'm straight or not because it goes back and forth. So my little junky turntable works just fine for me for most of my stuff. It does not spin as fast though because my bearings are wearing out on there. So I'm going to take this and get my fresh bowl of clean icing. That doesn't have crumbs in it. I'll put this away so it doesn't get sticky. And I'm going to take my creamy, yummy frosting. That's fantastic, by the way. I'm going to hit this cake with my second coating of icing. This coating does not need to be nearly as thick because you have that nice barrier between your cake, but still don't lift your cake up. And I'm not sure how they want me to really frost this not smooth. They were like they wanted it all rough, and that's what I plan on doing. So the icing is kind of fluffy. That's why I made it fluffy, because if I were to use a stiffer consistency icing, I wouldn't be able to rough it all up and make it look swirly and whirly. This cake, when I get to the reception hall, it's going to have button mums and succulents on it. So like little well, not really cactus, but something like that. The little succulents, the little fat, like hen and chick type plants that their florist is bringing. So, and I certainly don't want this much frosting on here, but I'm gonna, and I don't want the cake to be absolutely loaded down with that much icing. So I want to take some of that off because that's awfully fat. And I want it to look symmetrical anyways. Somewhat, because it is a wedding cake. And nobody wants that much icing on a cake. That would be some big fat icing. If you see any little crumbs, pick them out. So I'm just gonna take my knife and I'm just gonna swirl into it randomly. And I really do not know what I'm doing right now because I have never had to make a rough cake. I think that's too rough. your air pocket. Dang it. Troublemakers. And they want random icing, which I don't really like that. But I'm used to making them real smooth. Pretty. Okay, making it not smooth is harder than I thought. Do you hear me?
Are you taping?
Yeah. But do you hear me?
Yeah. Sorry, making noise.
I really want like a rough stucco-y look. It's kind of horrible, isn't it? Huh? Oops. Lifted off the cake. Flour will go there. I don't know about that. Well, it looks like I'll be messing with this for a while. So, as you can see, this is how you rough up a cake. And if you can find a better way, let me know. I don't have to worry about the top too much because the other layer of cake is going to set on there. So you're only going to see the edge. I don't like it. So I will be back. I will fix this up and I will make it to my liking, and it also has to have a ribbon that goes around the bottom. I don't know how that's going to work out as well. So I'll be back and we'll do another part when I get ready to stack. Thanks. I'll see you later. It's hollysbakery.com.